I ain't got nothing but love, babe. 8 days a geek.
Hello and welcome to this next installment of the 8 Days a Geek YouTube series called What If? Boys, lovely waving. Really like that.
Thank you.
My name is Chris Weeks and I am joined by
AJ Jenks.
and
Benjamin Broyer.
I'm sort of pointing down. I'm assuming that he's down there. He's down there on my screen. That's all that matters.
It's down there on mine as well.
So you're joining us here. This is a bit of a special episode because the podcast that we've got coming out this week sort of inspired this episode, particularly in AJ Jenks's head, because we boys were always talking about the films and the books, and we're also talking about the games. And there was an alternate ending to a particular game which I played on PS2. Jenks, I think you said you played it on Xbox. The Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith video game. Now, boys, this was a great game, wasn't it?
Oh yeah,
This one of the best games on the whole console.
I actually feel left out, but I did mention I used to play it on that tiny little portable Xbox screen. Do you remember?
Oh yeah, you did. Yeah, they were really cool, but they were expensive.
So expensive.
This is nice that we're actually bringing in our first game
Yeah.
into
It's something that we've talked about as well before, but we sort of accidentally stumbled into it.
Yeah.
Which is, that's just, we do that quite a lot, I suppose. So, but what happened in that game? There was an alternate ending where essentially Anakin won on Mustafar, and it's the dark side ending to the game, I suppose. And that got us to thinking, what if Anakin had killed Obi Wan on Mustafar? It's a big question. It's got big repercussions. And boys, shall I kick us off?
Please.
Oh, please, yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's think about this for a moment. So obviously, we know what happens with Anakin. He becomes Darth Vader. He's already Darth Vader at this point on Mustafar. We should probably point that out. He's sort of left behind the personality of Anakin Skywalker, and he's fallen to the dark side. He's sworn himself to Palpatine. All of this stuff has gone down, and he's engaged in this cataclysmic duel with Obi-Wan. So what happens in canon, of course, he gets defeated by Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan leaves him for dead. Obi-Wan disappears off, becomes Ben, trains Luke, and the series goes on as we know. But so there's always been this thing in the back of my mind, and it's been referenced a few points, but there's never been a sort of definitive answer about it, which is the relationship between, I sound really scientific, the relationship between how much flesh and body someone has and how strong they are with the Force. And there was a theory once upon a time that because Anakin lost a significant amount of his body, he lost Force potential, and so he would never have been able to overtake Palpatine. And of course, he also got the suit from Palpatine. Palpatine put it together. Anakin, or Vader rather, tweaked it and augmented it and made it better and stronger and all this himself after getting it. But it was Palpatine's design, and it kept him in pain. It kept his rage burning away, so that he had those powers. And also, it was very susceptible to Force lightning, because there's this. It's in I can't remember which comic it is, but there's a Star Wars comic where it's immediately after he goes mental and he's asking about Padme, and he screams no. It's a beautiful bit of cinema that everyone adores, and there's no controversy about. But immediately after that, he blasts Palpatine against the wall in his anger, and Palpatine shocks him and says, "Don't ever use the Force against me again." And so Vader's got this constant weakness. So in my head, without that weakness, Anakin for me overtakes Palpatine as the supreme Sith Lord. And I think he goes on to dominate the galaxy. And so then the question is, does Luke find his way to training? And in a way, it sort of has to be an innate thing. You know what I mean? Because Anakin, or Vader rather, isn't aware that his children are out there. And even though they've been named Skywalker, and, if we imagine that Luke has somehow found his way to Tatooine, someone else had the idea to take him to Tatooine, because obviously Obi-Wan is not there. And he's still called Skywalker and all this. Would Vader necessarily have found him? For me, it's a question of whether the series beyond Episode 3 kicks off at all, because for Luke to train and grow in stature enough to take on a Vader who has not been damaged and who has not got that weakened connection to the Force and those weakened powers, and also doesn't have that sort of, there's always something about being the second in command where there's a slight sliver of of doubt, I suppose. In my mind, at least, like he wants Luke to join him so that they can overthrow Palpatine. That's the thing that links them together straight away. And if Vader was if he was the dominant force and he was getting darker and darker and more powerful, and he has nothing to live for at this point, we imagine that Padme is dead, and he's the master of this empire, steeped in the dark side. I'm not sure that he would be drawn back in the same way, because he's in such a position of strength and power to defend, whereas Vader has always got that little bit more to get to. So from my perspective, if I were to ask myself, what if Anakin, or Vader rather, killed Obi Wan on Mustafar? For me, dominates the galaxy, is unopposed, and that's it for me, boys. What do you reckon?
I mean, that was really fascinating, and I am a massive fan of where you went with it, and
He's a fan of me. It's
I'm
fair.
a fan of you, basically. But how interesting all these little points that you brought up were, not just the main idea of what if, but that when you went into about how your body mass can say how powerful you are with the Force. I was thinking, that's so interesting. And
If the midichlorian thing is true, then that sort of makes sense.
yeah, I've never thought about. I mean, I don't want to put a joke in here, boys, but I mean, if Jabba was Force sensitive, he'd be ruler of the galaxy. But
It's
you know
true.
what? That's really interesting to me, and I love that thought, and I've never explored it before. Can I go now, or Jenks, do you want to go?
Please.
Go on, Pry.
Okay, right. So again, it always seems the way that I'm always just going with what Chris says, but it's because he's so
Big fan.
intelligent, and isn't it, Jenks? It just has the answers, and it's frustrating.
Bring me into it.
Sorry. But yeah, I love this idea, and I want it to be a film. I want this to be a real thing. I would have actually really liked this ending, and think it could have had its own place to set up a whole new era of films that weren't necessarily focusing on our main protagonist, which I think is awesome. Whether Luke would have been inspired by his father, and whether he would have followed his footsteps and then become a Sith with the rule of two that Anakin would then still have in place, or whether Anakin would demolish the rule of two and decide to take on loads of apprentices and have his own Sith academy, in which case there wouldn't be many opposing forces on the council, the Jedi Council.
Yeah, that's more like the old Republic, isn't it?
Yeah, and that to me is like, hold on a minute, this is something new that we could really explore here. If I was George Lucas, and I'm not, by the way, but if I was, I would be looking into something like this, because this is like fan excitement all over. And to kind of take inspiration, if Anakin were to take inspiration from the Old Republic and follow in their footsteps, I actually think that's where this could have gone. If he killed Obi-Wan, he could have his own Sith academy teaching people, but it wouldn't really be Sith anymore, because there wouldn't be much of a Jedi Council to overthrow. He would have demolished all of them, and it would just be one way of using the Force. This is how you use the Force. Very much so leading a dictatorship forward into and ruling politics in that sense as well, rather than having a democracy and having councils talking about things. It would be Anakin and his new protege, Luke, if you will, ruling the galaxy and sorting politics between them rather than taking it anywhere else. I think it'd be a lot more of a darker world, but at the same time, I don't think there'd be as much war. There'd be resistance, and there'd be, and again, I know it sounds barbaric, and
it sounds quite fascist what you're sort of proposing, and you seem really behind it as well.
I'm really sorry. I don't mean this as in like this would be a good thing in real life. I'm saying for a film, this would be a really interesting idea. And I think you'd have the resistance like we do in the sequels. But what a force they would have to be fighting if it were, instead of Palpatine, was Anakin, who hadn't, as you say, been constructed into this kind of weakened form, who had the full potential of his Force abilities, with Luke Skywalker as his acolyte. I mean, the resistance would be different anyway, because would Leia be here? I don't think so.
Well, she'd be an Organa, I suppose, so maybe.
Possibly, yeah, actually, if she was never made aware of her true heritage.
She'd just be a political figure.
Yeah. And I mean, she'd be fighting underground. It's this kind of almost underworld feel that I'm getting from this. I don't know if you boys are fans of Underworld, but that's
Yeah.
that kind of
Yeah,
thing
absolutely.
I'm getting from it. And I would love to see it. That's my whole thoughts, basically. I really want to have it made.
So if I were to ask you, what if Anakin killed Obi-Wan?
But there would be a dictatorship, and
And
then
you're completely behind.
yeah, he'd rule with an iron fist, and I'd be like, "Go on, mate, let's do this."
Wow, there it is. There it is. It's an interesting pride. Something you brought up there, the rule of two things. So Palpatine was really going for the rule of one. Like he wanted to rule eternally.
Yeah,
And sort of transfer his consciousness and have all these clones. And we sort of saw that play out a little bit in the sequels. And it was referenced in a lot of the expanded universe stuff pre the sequels, before everything was sort of decanonized. So it's an interesting thought to think, would Vader carry that on?
yeah,
Would he be more traditional, like you say? And also that Luke would, presumably, if Luke followed the same path ish and he found his way to Tatooine, he would join the Imperial Academy to train as a pilot, because
yeah,
that's what he was going to do before Ben found him.
exactly. No Ben Kenobi.
So maybe he would find his way to Vader that way, and Vader would just think, oh, he's a strong Force user or whatever. And then,
Yeah.
interesting thought, isn't it?
Oh, I mean, how cool would that? Can we imagine a fan-made version of this
Yeah.
on YouTube? People out there, if you're listening, if you do fan-made stuff, make this, because
Yeah.
I mean, you'll get a lot of views.
I'd love some what if fan made films.
Yeah,
God,
We
that
should
would be
get
good,
one.
wouldn't it?
Between us, we'll do it.
We'll finance it. We'll use the prior millions.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was
It'd be
sort of-
great. Jenks, you still there?
So, obviously, I'm going to go down a little bit of a different route,
Yeah, nice.
Not the fascist route.
as I usually do.
Sorry,
Oh, no.
people.
Fascism is just playground stuff compared to where I'm going. No, so yeah, I'm thinking of Luke would have always ended up on Tatooine. It wasn't Obi-Wan that took him there. It wasn't his idea. It was Yoda's idea. Yoda said to Obi-Wan, "Take him to his family, you
Mm.
will." So
Excellent. Good quote. Thanks for that.
So I believe it wouldn't have been that much different. I think Yoda would have taken Luke to Tatooine. Yoda would have then gone, well, I need to look over him. And I think it pretty much would have been exactly the same.
Wow.
I don't think there's that much difference other than Anakin would, well, Vader would still look like Hayden Christensen, obviously, but older.
So would it be Vader versus Yoda on the Death Star?
Yeah.
With him leaping about all over the shop?
Yeah, going.
They couldn't have done that in 1977.
But the thing is that if that is Yoda and Vader having that fight on that Death Star, it'd be a lot more interesting to see the outcome.
Yeah, well,
It's true.
especially if it's 1977 Yoda. That'd be very interesting.
Yeah.
Sick on a log.
It's literally a Muppet doing the fighting in that instance.
But yeah, I don't believe there would have been that much difference. In the Star Wars Revenge of the Sith game, Anakin wins and then on Mustafar murders Palpatine and screams, "The galaxy's mine."
Yeah.
And stuff. I don't think that would have happened because there still was a massive amount of respect at that point
Yeah.
between them both. I don't think he would have just gone against him. But the thing is that you've also got to think about is that if Obi-Wan dies, Anakin goes back to Padme's body, finds the body. She then has the kids.
That's true. Yeah.
Then where does that go? That's a whole.
Or does Palpatine find the body because he arrives first?
Exactly. Yeah. What does he do? Does he take Padme's body and Anakin, has to chase them down or something like that? Or does Padme have the kids? Does Anakin literally say, no, it's okay, the Chancellor is fine? Like I said earlier, it's absolutely fine. The Jedi betrayed us. She then has the children, and then Anakin is still an apprentice to Palpatine, and he's got 2 kids as well, which I think would be quite cool that he then does the academy, then raises them up as Sith. There's that possibility as well. But I think the one that I move towards more is that pretty much I don't think anything would have changed other than Yoda taking Luke to Tatooine. And,
Do you think Luke would have defeated Vader in the end? Or would he have redeemed him?
I don't know, because Yoda's training is very different to Obi Wan's. Like,
He's more cryptic, isn't he?
It's
He rides him a lot more as well.
But true. But the whole thing is that if Vader kills Yoda, then in Empire Strikes Back, Luke has no one to train him in that moment. He would have just gone back and just still been the same Jedi. Wouldn't have been able to get any training, unless we then find out that Ahsoka was around at this point and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, she is around at this point.
She is.
But it just hasn't been shown or anything like that. But yeah, that's the kind of thing. Maybe that's what I think would have happened, is that Yoda would have taken Luke to Tatooine. Same would have happened with Leia. Then, see, the only thing is that how does Yoda get a hand on Luke and Leia and Padme? He doesn't. He can't, because it's Obi-Wan that takes Padme's body.
Yeah, it's true.
So I think, in fact, yeah, the more likely thing is that Darth Vader just has 2 kids.
Wow. So it really becomes a sort of
It's a very
a coming of age story.
Family Sith kind of vibe.
It's that 70s show. That's what it turns into.
Yeah, but there
It's a
would have
sitcom.
been on Coruscant. The Empire would have been made. The Resistance would have been very weak.
Yeah.
Yoda would have been probably more of a face of the Resistance and stuff. And yeah, I think that's kind of what would have happened.
Wow. So just to summarize, we've got, from me, questions about how the physical makeup of a body affects your relationship with the Force. From Prior, fascist ideology at the forefront. And from Jenks, a mid-2000s sitcom.
Yeah.
Dad, are you going Sithing again? Yep. I'm off out today. Is Uncle Palpatine coming around? Yes, he is.
Good.
You tell him put his hood back on because it scares us. Okay, I'll tell him.
It does look awful, in fairness. No, interesting, boys. It's a great one. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard our thoughts on that, varied as they are. And it's one of those questions where, as we all discovered as we went down the line, there are so many little branches it could go down, so many different sort of facets of outcome that could come from that, and it could follow all sorts of different directions. I would love to see some of these sort of followed up. I'd love that. I'd love there to be an alternate Star Wars timeline that was explored in the same way that it is in games briefly.
There is a couple in the comics.
Yeah.
There's a couple of ideas where the Millennium Falcon is being chased, that they go into hyperspace, but they stay in hyperspace for like 2 weeks, and then they crash land on Earth.
On Earth? Wow.
I mean, that is cool.
It's a rogue idea.
That is rogue. Well, yeah, they come into contact with our reality.
Might even say it's a rogue one.
But if you have any questions, thoughts, ideas, opinions, if you want to share them with us, we would be delighted. Please pop them in the comments below. Send them over to us on Instagram or Facebook or wherever you connect with us. And please do subscribe and leave us some comments, leave us some reviews, leave us some feedback on this video and this series. Let us know that you're enjoying it. We've got a new podcast out as well, so make sure you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts from. And well, from me, I believe that's it. So I have been Chris Weeks, and I've been joined by
AJ Jenks.
not to mention
Benjamin Pryor, who's also going to plug that our website also has our podcast on. Thank you.
Here we go. Give
Thanks
up on
for
the
that,
other
Chris.
providers. Just find it on the website.
8daysago.com.
Get a t-shirt.
I need your love.
Get a
babe.
t-shirt.
God, I like to choke men.
Oh, God.
8 days a geek.